Hello, my name is Timonan Harlau, and I am a postgraduate student at the Cyprus University of Technology, currently attending my master's degree in data science and engineering. In this webinar today, I will present my thesis project during my undergraduate studies. My thesis topic was a creation of a web application that exports useful information for businesses and organizations using the web scraping technique, specifically though in the cryptocurrency and the Forex field. In other words, I've created a web application that a user can basically create and manage their own scrapers that will scrape data from the provided sources and will be able to view the scrape results. Not only that, but they can also compare sources, specifically news sources though, and view charts based on Forex and cryptocurrency data. Firstly, I will introduce my thesis project and then go over some technical background that I needed. Then I will explain the development methodology used. I will also be showing you a demonstration of the system, which will be at the end of the webinar. Before that though, I will talk about my future work regarding this thesis. The necessity of research is basically the need of exporting useful information for companies and organizations. However, I specifically chose to do this in the financial sector. This includes markets and cryptocurrencies. Basically, the end goal is to create a tool which anyone, specifically financial advisors, could use in order to make easy and quick decisions. As mentioned in the previous slide, my research area was the stock market and cryptocurrencies. The stock market refers to public markets that exist for issuing, buying, and selling stocks that trade on the stock exchange or over the counter. Stocks, also known as equities, represents fractional ownership in a company, and basically the stock market is a place where investors can buy and sell ownerships of such investable assets. And the cryptocurrency is basically a digital or virtual currency that is secured by cryptography, which makes it nearly impossible to counterfeit or double spend. There are countless of sites that provide data about stock markets and or cryptocurrencies. So basically the objective of this research was to explore the possibility of creating a web application that would create and manage web scrapers and basically gather all of this information in one place. Now, for the technical background of this research, there are some basic knowledge that anyone needs to know. To start off, there are four key elements of a web application. The first one is the HTML, or in other words, hypertext markup language, which is a computer language that makes up most of the web pages and online applications. A hypertext is a text that is used to reference other pieces of text, basically, while a markup language is a series of markings that tells the web servers the style and structure of a document. Another key element is the CSS, or a cascading style sheet, which is basically a language to stylize elements written in a markup language, such as HTML. Basically, it separates the content from the visual representation of the site. The third key element is JavaScript, which is a scripting language for creating a dynamic web page content. It creates elements for improving site visitors' interactions with web pages, such as, for example, drop-down menus, animated graphics, etc. And the fourth element is images and or videos. Now, what is web scraping? Basically, web scraping is a process of collecting structured web data in an automated fashion. It's also called web data extraction. Some of the main use cases of web scraping include price monitoring or price intelligence, news monitoring, market research, etc. You would usually convert data to structured data that can be stored and then analyzed. And basically the traditional way of this would be copy and paste. In regards to the web scraping, there are three popular ways to extract data from the websites. The first one is using regex, or regular expression, which is a sequence of characters that specifies a search pattern. The second way is XPath, which is XML path language. It's a query language for selecting nodes from an XML document. And the third one is a CSS selector. Just like the rest, you can find web elements using the CSS selectors. In terms of web scraping, there are two things that you must consider. The first one is a web crawler, and the second one is a web scraping parser. A web crawler essentially is a robot that visits websites and crawls data. It will load a list of links, and then it will use those links to find further links. And a parser basically grabs all of the crawl data and extracts it. For example, a web crawler will find the data regarding, for example, cryptocurrencies, and the parser will then parse it, meaning it would, if wanted, modify the data and then extract it to any format that we need. For this entire project, um, the web scraping part was done using Scrappy framework, which is a framework in Python designed exclusively for scraping data. It includes 7 different components. The first one being the engine, which manages the flow of components. The second one is the scheduler, which schedules the tasks that need to be executed. The third one is the downloader, which will handle all of the HTTP requests that are sent to the websites in order to scrape the data. The fourth one is the spiders, which basically determine what actions need to take in order to detect and export the web data. The fifth one is the item pipeline, which will analyze the data from the spiders. For example, in the item pipeline, you could get the data and then just store the data in the database. The sixth one is the downloader middleware, which will track the requests that are sent or received by the downloader. And finally, the seventh one is spider middlewares, which are similar to downloader middlewares, basically custom editing for the input of the spider. In order to scrape websites that have JavaScript components, since the majority of the websites nowadays are built using either full JavaScript or have a lot of JavaScript components, in order to scrape these websites, I needed another tool that would allow me to do this. So there's a library called the Selenium WebDriver in Python, which is a library that allows me to load all of these JavaScript components automatically. Without this, I wouldn't be able to view, for example, a data table that has multiple pages. And with this, I can just tell the scraper to click the next button or in a data table, and it would automatically load the next page of the data table. When it comes to web scraping, there are some legal issues, I guess, that need to be studied. Generally speaking, web scraping is not illegal, but without the appropriate measures, it can be very easily. For example, most sites, if not all, they have a data ownership and a denial of service. For the data ownership, you would need to study the terms of service of each site that you would like to scrape. Also, if, for example, I conduct multiple requests to a site, there's a chance that my IP could be banned, and therefore I wouldn't be able to scrape the data unless I used an IP proxy service, for example. Also, you need to take into consideration the General Data Protection Regulation, or the GDPR, which basically states that processing any human data is prohibited. Now, there are quite a few challenges when it comes to web scraping. The first one being is the bot access, which basically each site has a robots.txt file that states what user agents are allowed to crawl the site and what files they are allowed to crawl. There's a way to bypass this file, however, it's illegal. Another challenge is the website architecture, which is constantly changing. In my case, each site that I had scraped needed an entirely new scraper. Another challenge that anyone could face is the IP address ban, which is caused after multiple requests. However, as mentioned above, it can be solved using an IP proxy service. Thankfully, I didn't have to use this. So another challenge is the CAPTCHA, or a completely automated public Turing test to tell computers and humans apart. Thankfully, the sites that I had picked to scrape didn't have any CAPTCHA implemented. Also, there are quite a few websites that have honey traps, which are links that are invisible to website users, but to robots, they're basically visible. You could use XPath here, which is a way to bypass honeypot traps. Furthermore, the dynamic content, which is very common to a lot of websites these days, As mentioned above, the way to bypass this is using a library that will help, like the Selenium WebDriver. Another challenge is the cookies, which basically they're from logging forms. And lastly, since the data is constantly changing, there needs to be a constant monitoring of this. Now, I will go over the development methodology. The programs and coding languages that I use for this project are the following. Visual Studio Code, which is a code editor we defined and optimized for building and debugging modern web and cloud applications. I use Postgres, which is a free and open source relational database management system, which emphasizes extensibility and SQL compliance. Vue.js, which is an open source model view model front-end JavaScript framework. Basically, you can build user interfaces and single page applications. I used Laravel, which is a free open source PHP framework, which intended for the development of web applications that follow the MVC or the model view controller pattern, and it's based on Symfony for anyone that knows. I use Python, which is an interpreted high-level general purpose programming language. Python, I mainly use it for the web scraping. I use Scrappy, which is a free and open source web crawling framework written in Python. Originally, it was designed for web scraping, but you can also use it to extract data using APIs or as a general purpose web crawler. And lastly, I used GitHub, which is a provider of internet hosting for the software development and version control using Git. Basically, it offers distributed version control and source code management functionality of Git. In this application, there are two users, the administrator and the basic user. I will explain all of the functions of the web application that I've created. First of all, the basic user has access to a dashboard with his own data, pages where they can manage their own scrapers, add, edit, delete, and scrape the data. They have access to the view news section where they can compare multiple news at the same time, and they can create charts for cryptocurrencies and or Forex. The administrator has everything above, but for all of the users. For example, in the scraper section, the administrator can view the scrapers of all of the users, and also it has a settings section just to add, edit or remove users from the website. Here's a sneak peek of the dashboard. I will go over the system demonstration later on in the video. So here are the steps that I took in order to code the entire web application. Firstly, I had to set up my own coding environment, which I used VS Code to code the entire application. Then I had to download some libraries that I needed. After that, I went over to GitHub to set up my repository. Then I had to just do a lot of research, making a list of websites that I would be able to crawl and scrape. For each site, for example, I had to check that the robots.txt file would allow me to do such a thing, as well as all of the other requirements that I have previously said. After that, I created the Laravel project with Vue.js, as well as the PostgreSQL database. And the next step was to create the web scrapers. During this process, a few sites I wasn't able to scroll or even scrape because of the various different challenges that I had stumbled upon. So I had to choose other sites. But after all of that was done, I created an API to manage the scrapers. And then I started with the front end and the back end of the website, and I just connected everything at the end. There are quite a lot of difficulties that I faced during this development. The first one is that a lot of times requests were sent to the websites were denied. That had a lot to do with the user agent that was used in order to send the request, as well as the headers. Another issue was JavaScript websites. I needed to use Selenium WebDriver. The third one was I needed to check the robots.txt if the bot was allowed to crawl through the website just to be legal. The fourth one is that um, the fourth one was the joining of the Python and the Laravel project. I had to create an API for that, and the another one was the scheduling of the scrapers. Basically, I was unable to do that because um, my application was hosted on a Windows server. That meant that I had to do task scheduling. But if I had hosted it on a Linux server, I would be able just to use cron jobs. I will bypass the system demonstration and just skip to the conclusion because that's for the end of the webinar. Now, to conclude, with the increase of internet usage, there are a lot of increase in data volume. Also, web scraper is a powerful tool with great features. When it comes to web scraping, there are many challenges that need to be faced, and therefore, there are high maintenance costs. In this research, I have used the web scraping technique to create a web application for example, a financial advisor or anyone really to easily make decisions. However, there are other parts, there are other areas that web scraping can be used, for example, real estate or product prices, etc. In the future, a scheduler could be implemented so that the user can schedule their own scrapers to start scrape sites at any given time, any given day. Not only that, but it would be extremely nice to implement the ability to add other sources without actually changing the code, because now, in order to add a new site to scrape, I will need to change the code. And lastly, I think it would be great to implement artificial intelligence and or machine learning, where the user could input specific keywords that they would like to data, and it would automatically bring the sources and create the scrapers. Also, it would definitely help with the challenges that I faced, for example, CAPTCHA. That's it for the presentation. I will now go over the demonstration of my web application. So now I'll be demonstrating my system. This is called StatScrape. This is a tool that I have created for my thesis project. Here you are greeted with the login page and the sign up page, of course. You can log in or register for a new account. I will now log in to an administrative account. So after logging in, you are greeted with the dashboard. This is the same to their basic user as well. As you can see, I am logged in as an administrator. I can see that there are 11 users. There are total 11 scrapers. Each scraper, when you run it, it creates a job. So there are a total of 44 jobs, and there are a total of 579 results. This is basically rows of results. There's a quick link panel here, and of course there's the sidebar as well. In the settings page, this is only for the administrator. You can from here on you can view all of the users. You can delete and you can edit as well. Let's go to the scraper section. Here you can view a list of all of the scrapers. When you create a scraper, you can specify the name. Then you can select a source. This is the list of sources that I have. For example, I can choose the stock EMA from Bloomberg, which is a table, and it will create it. Each scraper has a list of tools. I can run a scraper, I can view all of the jobs, I can delete a scraper, and this is for future work. This is basically a schedule panel model thing. As you can see here, I can delete the scraper if I wanted to. When I click the run this scraper button, it will basically connect with the Scrappy API, and it will tell which file to run, and it will start scraping, crawling, and then scraping the website, and then all of the data will be saved in a PostgreSQL database. As you can see, I'm running the scraper. And then after it's done, I can view the jobs. This is a list of jobs for this specific scraper. If a job has failed, it will write fail here. If it's successful, it will write success. And I can see all of the jobs. All of the jobs. For example, let's go to the news table. I can view all of the jobs here, and then I can view all of the results. There's a total results of 16. There's a news URL, the source, the author, and the time posted. There are a few results that, for whatever reason, I couldn't get the title or the author, as you can see here. Another example. As you can see here, I can filter the entire table by or like a specific column that I want. I can export the table to a CSV file. As you can see. And I can visualize the data using a bar chart. You can see here. Now, if I go to the View News section, I can select a number of sources from 1 to 3 sources at a time. For example, I will compare 2 news sources. I will choose the first scraper. And the second scraper. When I click submit, it will bring all of the data into one entire table where I can just compare the news. This is great if I want to search for a specific topic and it's multiple sources. I can just view everything into one single table without having multiple tabs open. In the create a chart section, the user will be able to pick a market category and a time series. For example, they can click cryptocurrencies. The time series would be, for example, let's say monthly. I want to see the Bitcoin value in euros. And then when I click submit, I can see from 2019 until October of 2021 the value of Bitcoin in euro. This is directly from an API. Basically scrapes the site, grabs the API, and it will show the data. Can do daily as well, which is a much bigger chart, as you can see here. Okay. And that's about it for the system demonstration. Now I will show you a bit of the code and how it works, how everything is linked together. I will start off with the website itself. it, like I mentioned in the presentation previously, I use Vue.js and Laravel. If this was a Laravel project on its own, it would only have this folder. But since I have Vue.js, there are two main folders. In the Laravel section, as you can see here, this is where in the API.php under the roots folder, this is where I register all of my API routes, log in, register, view the scrapers, the news, and everything else. These are directly tied to controllers. As you can see here, I have multiple controllers. For example, in the scrapers controller, this is the main functionality where it will call the scraper controller and it will do all of the logic in here. Same thing for the users controller where I create, edit, delete users. The HTML, CSS files that I use, if this was only a Laravel project, it would be in this folder here, resources, views. But since I'm using Vue.js, I'm basically telling the Laravel to ignore this, the resources file, and to look in this folder here, where I have all of my views. For example, in the create a chart section that I previously showed, I'm creating templates with the header, the card headers, the button, the forms, and everything. And I'm basically sending requests inside here to the API, which is the Alpha Advantage API, and telling it what to do and everything, as you can see here. All of the form validations are inside as well here. Same thing with the scrapers. For example, create a scraper. This is the form where the user can create his own scraper, and basically it will send a request to the Laravel API, and then the Laravel API will trigger the controller, and it will do all of the logic inside there. Here as well, in the router file in Vue.js, I have other routes here that basically link to the Vue.js files. For example, if the dashboard is in, I'm basically saying to import the dashboard file, and then I can use it down here, and say /dashboard would take me to the dashboard file where it would show the file. Each section is basically a component. So you would have the jobs component, the scrapers component, run the scraper, create the scraper, etc. And you could also set the roles. For example, I could say that the create scraper would only be for administrators, so I'll write here true. Now for the important part, which is the scrapers. As you can see here, I am targeting another API for Scrappy. Basically here I am telling it to run the specific scraper and to fetch the results and bring it back here. I will show you now the Python project, which basically is the scraper. So as you can see here, basically the architecture is each folder is equals to a site. For example, let's take the Bloomberg currencies EMEA. Basically here I'm telling it what is the domain. I am setting up the connection to the site in order to call the data. I'm using a Chrome driver, which is it's a windowless application, and I'm basically telling it sorry, it's a headless application. I'm basically telling it what user agents to use, some other headers, and I'm using the Chrome driver, which is listed below here, setting the window size, and I'm grabbing the data using XPath. After that, it goes into pipelines.py, which basically I'm telling it the database and where to store it and everything. This is pretty much it for the Python side of things. All for this webinar. Thank you so much for your time.